Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So as usual, let's go over the market, let's go over Tesla, see what happened, discuss what potentially can be happening further from now on forward. And yeah, all that being said and done, if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. Again, none of this is financial advice. Do your own research, make your own decisions, but let's jump into it. Tesla ending the day up 0.27%, so fairly flat. However, taking into consideration that I think at the lowest point of the day, we were actually down about like 4.5% roughly. That's like quite a decent amount to recover all that and end green and essentially create an arguably a hammer candle, which is a good sign. These kind of candles are nicer to see somewhere down here, but this is still not a bad spot to see it overall. But yeah, overall pretty good, right? Compared to the market, still technically a slight underperformance, but nothing substantial, I would say. I mean, maybe it should have been up 1% instead of 0.3%. Nothing completely crazy. But again, taking into consideration the fact that how weak Tesla was and the fact that it recovered all that and still ended green, I would actually say is a nice W, right? That I will not be upset about. So yeah, let's talk about it, guys. So CPI came in pretty much in as expectations said. The market's kind of ran down initially, right? Tesla was underperforming the market actually initially as well, but then essentially the market and Tesla all of it recovered pretty decently, which is nice to see overall. Now again, I personally think SPY, for instance, is getting very close to a massive resistance being 400, where I personally will enter puts. Also, the put I entered yesterday, I did actually lose a little bit on it, like 7%, literally just because of volatility or VIX compression essentially, or like VIX forgetting the word of it, but essentially the volatility died substantially hard. So even though I had the direction correct, it doesn't matter as much. It wasn't correct enough for it outweigh how much volatility just essentially completely collapsed today. So just keep that in mind, right? That's an important thing to remember for future trades and options. Anyways, all that being said and done, the most important thing that I personally see today, ladies and gentlemen, is number one, we have a beautiful looking candle, right? A nice, beautiful hammer candle, which, again, better to see in like a true bottom area, like somewhere like down here. But, you can argue this is still technically at the bottom of a massive downtrend. So, this is still not a horrible place to see it, though, again, much better to see it somewhere down here. Instead, on top of that, though, the most important thing that I'm personally noticing is the fact that we finally had our first daily closure candle up in this range. You can see we've so many times went up into this range, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I guess today being the 5th time. And this is the first time of the 5 attempts, including today, that we finally were able to close the candle up above this kind of 123 level. Now, we are, of course, still in 123, so it's not like that much higher, really. So it's not like super convincing just yet, but it is definitely a start, and we did finally get a closure higher than all of these candles were always trying to do, but kept failing to do. That's the most important part. They kept failing it, and we finally succeeded at it, especially after such a massive red day initially. To recoup that and also end above this resistance so far is not a bad sign. Now, again, I want to make it very clear. I wouldn't call this extremely convincing just yet, because mainly it's not that much higher than these levels were unable to hold, right? It's not substantially higher. However, it is still entering that territory, and it is peeking its head, and this is looking promising. That's the most important thing to remember. It's promising. It's not convincing, but it is promising, and it's it's a start. Let's just say that it's absolutely a start. So this to me makes me actually a little bit more bullish now than I was yesterday, mainly because now this having a close like this makes me think that that 140, let's say, rough range that I'm still personally hoping for, aiming for, is still very much in action. I would easily say that's like a 65% chance that we can actually potentially start going up to that general level. So again, we need to see follow through. The most important part is we need to see follow through tomorrow. If we get it and we get follow through and we start, essentially going right up into the zone and, going higher than the zone, essentially higher than this like 125, let's say. If we can start getting above 125 and start closing like 1 hour candles and things like that in that area, that to me would be very, very bullish and very, very convincing that 140s most likely will be something that we will see as like maybe a run up into earnings. Definitely not out of the equation. However, the only thing that makes me a little bit concerned, somewhat unrelated to Tesla, is the fact that SPY is approaching absolutely astronomical resistance, which if SPY really doesn't have much more room up in my opinion, right? At best, I can see maybe like another %, right? So it's like, does Tesla have that room to run that much farther up to, let's say, 140, which is still about a 14% move from here, which is a decent amount, right? It's a fair move still. While SPY maybe has like 1%, unless it somehow actually breaks above this, which I don't think it will. That's the thing that's kind of conflicting for me, right? Where I'm a little bit confused or conflicted as to whether or not Tesla essentially just is allowed to move up that much, while the market potentially is looking like it's getting very close to like substantial resistance, which could be a definitely, a good argument for at least a short-term top for the market, if not potentially even a medium to potentially even a long-term top, right? So that's something else to really consider, right? You can also see this pretty bearish-looking candle on the TSLQ, which is good, which is what we want to see. But all in all, the easiest thing to say here is the fact that the bulls and the bears are absolutely fighting, right? You can see the bears definitely won yesterday, the bulls absolutely won today. So it's definitely like a tug of war between the bulls and the bears. I would definitely give the edge to the bulls for now, at least on Tesla. Again, maybe like a 65% advantage to the bulls, and the rest, of course, going to the bears. But that's essentially what I'm seeing, right? Taking a look at the moving day averages, of course, we have the 5 and the 10, which we essentially bounced off of today one more time again, which is great to see. You like to see that. We are, of course, still below the 121 or the 21 EMA, which is at 130. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had to, at the very least, come up to this. I would want to see at the least. If not, break above it and go to 140, touch the top line of this resistance being the yellow line, and then most likely fall back down under from there. Also, taking a look at the Bollinger Band, we are essentially approaching the white line, which again, it's not uncommon for Tesla to approach it, dance around it, up or down, definitely go above it as well. And then, you know, maybe consolidate sideways for a little bit, let these things kind of, you know, let the red and the green line sort of condense, not condense, but like contract, I guess. And then you essentially get another explosive move, either to the upside or to the downside, which again, I personally think will be to the downside, but that's definitely more into the future. That's probably like closer to the end of the month, I would even argue. But we'll see, of course. We'll see. With this kind of market, sometimes you really just never know. We're also, actually, interestingly enough, oh, that's a 10, never mind. Oops, I thought it was something else. Anyways, that's not that interesting anymore. We are, of course, approaching the 50-day moving average. The 200 is still substantially well above us, so as long as we're below the 200-day moving average, you can definitely argue that we are still very much in a bearish trend, and I think that's quite obvious at the moment regardless. And like I said, regardless of what happens next, I personally think the bear trend is absolutely not over, and the only thing that would even remotely make me consider it being over is either A, Tesla breaks above this yellow line, which essentially will be somewhere around the 140s to 150s level and holds more specifically, or more importantly, and SPY also breaks above this 400 level and also starts holding. If those two things can happen, you can argue the bear market is over. There's an absolute argument that can be made for that, but those are pretty massive ifs, and whether or not that actually happens is, of course, yet to be determined. I personally don't think it will. I would be genuinely surprised if it does, but that is something absolutely to consider, and it's technically not impossible. So that's essentially more or less what I'm seeing. We still have a beautiful bullish divergence setting up on Tesla. You can see just nice RSI just pointing pretty much more or less straight up, looking pretty juicy, making nice higher highs, even though the stock is technically kind of, still condensed in this little area over here. So overall, that's not looking too bad at all as well, guys. But yeah, that's essentially more or less what I'm seeing, ladies and gentlemen. So there's not a whole lot more to see other than the fact that the VIX is actually looking decently bearish, but last time it came down to these levels, it did get a pretty sizable bounce. So that's something else to consider, which kind of lines up with how the market is looking like it's potentially ready to be a little bit toppy over here. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing, guys. Let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.